Hello everybody, and welcome to this next video discussion in the RICS Tech Partner Programme series. My name is Andrew Knight and I work within the Standards Regulatory and Thought Leadership part of RICS. As you know, RICS is a global body, professional body and standard setter in the built and natural environment with over 130,000 members worldwide. Now, with members working right across the property life cycle in various different asset types, residential, land, office, commercial, infrastructure, etc. It's a very broad church in terms of what our members do, and thus the impact of data and technology is incredibly broad and profound. And today I'm really happy to have Emil and Josh from Interval to talk to us about software and valuation. So please do join us.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
How are you?
Andrew. Very well, and great to have you on the call today. Now, I always like to kind of, as well as talking about the impact of data and tech and the bits and bytes, it's always kind of nice to paint a picture of the people and the team and a bit of a backstory, particularly for a firm like yourselves who are developing a new product. So it'd be great to give us, if you could give us a bit of background on you and the rest of the team, and also the kind of the genesis of the organization back to Mongolia, I believe.
Well, yes, we operate a real estate firm in Mongolia, mainly focused on helping developers raising financing, also helping institutions for urban planning also. And we've got this other activity which is valuation.
Okay, indeed, and I know you're very involved with making sure your solutions look at valuation, but also from the perspective of IVS and the Red Book and the standards. So give us a bit of a background on the team. I believe you've got an RICS member. What's the kind of background of the team in terms of their experience?
So this is Emil speaking. So basically, so my background originally is urban planning, and I moved to valuation right in Mongolia. So specializing in first residential real estate, and because we operate in Mongolia where one has to do a bit of everything, kind of spanning out two different real estate sector, whether it's commercial and so on. And so we have George here, which has a lot of experience working with the banks, commercial banks and institutions, as I said. And so we first had this, we became RICS member, the firm in more than 10 years ago. And so in Mongolia, one of our jobs too was to promote the standards for Mongolian valuers, both at the private, I would say, levels, so hand in hand with valuers, and also from at the institution side. So trying to push the adoption of standards of IVSC for the banks when they do valuation and so on. So we were engaged in that for the past couple of years. And at some point, so we arrived on, we were involved in this asset quality review of all the commercial banks in Mongolia for the IMF. And so at that point, we were engaged as RICS valuers, as auditors to review all those
valuation
reports ordered by the banks to value their assets. And we realized that there was something missing. So first, even though IVSC was adopted in Mongolia in 2010, there was a huge mismatch between the level of experience and of standards normally applicable by law and the actual practice on the ground. So we looked at that. So we carried out capacity building for Mongolian valuers and so on, part of the Mongolian institution of appraisers. And we thought, well, that works in Mongolia. There is a need in Mongolia to strengthen the standards, not only IVSC, but even other standards that are the IPMS, the RICS standards as well. And so we thought, well, yeah, there is something to do here. And so try to connect with other valuers worldwide if they also have this issue, I would say. And yeah, they did. So we launched the project a couple of years ago now.
So in that sense, Interval came out of that need, as you say, to enable data and technology to support the valuation process. So, you know, there was obviously a decision there to develop the platform. What do you see as the kind of particular issues and challenges that the platform is aiming to solve?
So from a value perspective, and I'm not going to talk about the first, not only the process management, but from a valuation perspective, especially working in emerging economies where there is no data everywhere like there is in the UK or in the US. So it's first trying to access this data and have a centralized access and not only rely on online solutions that aggregate a bit of data from everywhere, but to have a centralized data hub, I would say. And it takes time for valuers to actually do the evaluation, retrieve the data, and make sure that they are up to the standards, especially because they are changing every couple of years and there are new concepts that emerge. So if I look in valuation recently for the past couple of years, there has been the whole integration of ESG criteria and consideration into the valuation process. And so there are always for valuers more and more standards that come into the valuation game. And so it takes time to do evaluation first and then to make sure that this valuation is up to the standards. And this is not only a need of valuers, but also from a top-down perspective. So commercial banks are more and more requiring valuers to justify their assumptions, to be transparent about their inputs, and not only say that they looked at market evidence and came up with this value. So no, the auditors, and we've seen that in Mongolia, which is a positive development, really, going from a very rough and very basic valuation reports to a more detailed one that shows everything. And so there was this need for valuers that needed to be answered and met with something. So that's why we try to resolve for them. To be able to follow the standard, be 100% standard compliant, and do the evaluation quickly, and do all that with one tool and not a series of tools, a bit of scattered everywhere.
So when as you've begun to develop your solution, how have you thought that actually it needs to do something different from the kind of existing platforms that are out there? What do you think are the additional issues that you're building into your system and your platform that the current kind of solutions aren't providing?
Well, at start, we didn't find any platform was doing what we wanted and what those Mongolian valuers needed. You know, they were. What you have to understand about the Mongolian valuation market is that, okay, they follow the IVS. They've been given the Red Book, a translation of the Red Book, and that's it. No one showed them how to build the reports, or to, you know, should the value be at the start, at the end, what is the market research. They had no idea, you know, of what to do. So we had to build everything from scratch. They even didn't know what was the term of engagement. You know, most of the time, you know, it was okay. You want the value of that particular apartment, we're going to do it. No contract. And here is a one pager with a number here, and this is your value.
And we've seen there are really a lot of amazing projects, valuation projects on the market right now. There have been for the past 5 years, I would say. Most of them, they focus on the calculation only. And they go all about, we are AVM, we have the best AVM technology that allows us to find the values of property within a 1.5% margin of error, which is great. But apart from the calculation, there is not much otherwise. As George said, there is nothing about the whole valuation process that has to be followed to be also transparent and to be clear with the clients and anyone that uses the valuation. What about this? What standards are used, basis of value or approach, and so on. And so we saw that there was a gap between what was on the market, what we had in mind to develop. And so we said, okay, well, we'll focus on that, and we won't focus on the data aspects of things to develop the solution, like we think a lot of solutions right now do, because they also operate in data-rich environments. We come from a different background, so let's adopt more standard-oriented.
We wanted to focus on the process, on the full process, from really A to Z, from the moment we meet the client, we write the terms of engagement, to the full valuation process, or to conduct an inspection, or to and so on till the end, and or to write a report and generate it.
So as you say, in that sense, that you're not, although I presume your platform can clearly consume data, you're thinking so much, as you say, about that process of making sure that all the documentation, all the workflow, the report itself, all that information that, as you say, for example, a commercial bank would want to understand the thought process, see all those points, milestones as the valuer has gone through the process. So if they do demand that extra transparency, then the valuer can say, well, here are all the various points along that journey to demonstrate what they've done, as you say, from the very first point in terms of agreeing terms of engagement, agreeing special assumptions, all those kind of things.
Yeah,
exactly.
So where are you now in terms of development, and where do you see this being applied in terms of markets? Because it's interesting you comment about developing markets as opposed to, you know, countries like the UK and the US. Where are you in terms of your development, and where do you see that the market opportunities for this?
Well, the one thing that we didn't also mention it straight in this call, but the whole structure of FinTabel currently follows RICS Global Red Book. So it's applicable everywhere, provided that there is a valuer that has access to the data on his market and he can input it manually into the solution. Any market can be targeted. So that's the overarching, I would say, strategy. And then, so because RICS valuer, if we are realistic, most of them are in the UK, in more developed markets. And so in that case, we need to look at national supplements. There is a UK specific Red Book, and there are a lot of the RICS. I'm going to talk about the RICS Red Book, but made a lot of supplements country by country. And so we are going to look at what are the specificities of each country and make sure that we also integrate their national standard into the solution directly, so that it can be used.
But not only standards. It concerns also property types, where, for example, in the UK, you're going to have bungalows. It's something we don't have in France. Or in Mongolia, we will have yurts.
So,
but property types also are changing everywhere in the world. Even the definition of condominium is different from country to country. So we need to adapt on every market. We're going to need to adapt to the specific target property of that market.
I mean, on that basis, I mean, as you know, in markets like the UK, there's a lot of activity in the so-called alternatives, self-storage, data centers, senior living, institutional build to rent, that kind of multifamily. Are those the kind of asset types that you're going to cover as well?
Yeah, exactly. So we have all the standards assets, residential houses, whether it's Victorian, terraced house, and so on. But the way the solution is structured, that it allows us to be flexible also in terms of what type of assets we value and we can also cover. And then it's up to the valuer to build, and the users, not only the valuers, but to build, they can build template systems to value specific types of properties. And so then the solution can support multifamilies, office or properties, different types of self-storage or warehouses, whether it is flex spaces, and it also integrates office components in it. So we try to do something flexible, but flexible enough to be adapted also everywhere, with just small parts that are country specifics and property type specifics.
Indeed, I mean, one of the things I know when I talk to valuers is in terms of flexibility, is they're obviously very proud of the kind of the layout of their particular valuation reports. They feel that the way they present the valuation report is quite distinctive and unique to them as a valuation house. Do you allow that kind of flexibility to make sure that a particular valuer can output, obviously, the information that the Red Book requires, but do it in a way that's distinctive to their particular house style, if I can use that expression?
Yeah, so this really will depend also on the type of agreement we have, and I would say the market strategy. For if it's only one valuer that requires it, and if it's in a market where we are not, we are operating, but we don't have any local presence, That would be difficult. For more developed market where there is a strong demand for it, yes, we have this reporting module at the end of the valuation process, which allows for flexibility and customization of the reports. And at the end of the day, the report is a Word document. So there is also this possibility to play with the different sections and move if needed. But yeah, those are the kind of things that we're working on to be able to offer the maximum of customization possibilities and really let valuers decide what they want to do with it.
In many property types, I think we will gather, I mean, what we'll be thinking and we are finishing right now, we will be able to cover 98, 99% of any needs.
And you know, another perhaps market-specific question, although it obviously comes up in a number of jurisdictions, is this move towards more kind of operating income type models where, you know, real estate is becoming slightly blurred in terms of it becoming more a kind of a profit and loss type, a bit like a sort of trade-related premises where you're looking at almost a business using a particular asset. So are you looking at those kind of much more kind of you know, income-related DCF type approaches? And I know you're not looking at necessarily the calculation side, but once again, are you taking into account that kind of move towards these much more kind of operating income, operating expenses type models? For instance, things like multifamily, where it's very much about almost a kind of verging on business valuation to some extent.
Yeah, because so at now we have focused development on the whole comparable methods of valuations, and we are jumping now into the income method. So we have all those models for the I would say capitalization method, which are very simple and quite straightforward. But the problem with it, especially now that the commercial real estate market is switching from those long leases to more uncommon, I would say, lease terms and so on. So in the DCF, that we know the way we want to build it is inside the DCF model to have modules of incomes, of expenses, and that can be attributed to different lines and accounts, I would say. So that we can also separate the leases from other operational incomes that if they come, whatever, from not the lease of offices, but of services inside the building or the property, and to be able to take them into account and to reflect truly the value of the real estate as we say, the business rather than just space to lease. Yeah.
Now, another interesting theme I'd like to ask you about is in many markets, and I talked to many participants, there's an increasing desire to not only produce valuation reports as documents, but have it as structured data. If I think about the market in the Netherlands, for example, valuations are passing back and forth in XBRL. Are you looking at those kind of outputs as well, where people want to integrate valuation outputs directly into the banking system, for example?
Yes, we do, and that's one of the reasons we built this online valuation repository, which is an output to another, basically to another layer. So it's something we are looking to do in the future.
So what is your roadmap like? What stage are you at now? When do you see the product going into production beta? Or
basically, we've just released the version 2 of our beta version number 2, which comprise the framework. We finished a full framework, all the user management aspect, everything. You know, we can work in team. Several people can work in the same assignments, and so on. We are currently finishing the comparable process, which is going to take maybe another month or 2. We've been adding a lot of property types, and this will also continue for the next one month or 2. And I think we'll be done with all that. And then we can move on to the income approach method, yes, which will take maybe another 2 months.
Yeah. And so what we plan is that by the end of this year, we have the full comparable and income methods developed, so that we can then go and to look for the commercial release. That valuers already have a package. It's not complete, but it's enough to do most of the valuations that can come their way.
And I presume it's an obvious thing to say, Emile, but there must be huge value. No pun intended in the use of the word value, but there must be a huge value in terms of your discussions with other valuers, because I presume you're kind of developing this very much hand in hand with those firms that are already beginning to look at it and use it, because it's always difficult to build these things in a darkened room, isn't it?
Yes, true.
And yeah, and so we've engaged in discussions first when we started to develop it, and again, I think we started again 6 months ago, and so to engage with valuers. And what's been fun is that they come from all around the world, so from South Africa, the UK, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. And so each of them actually is looking for something in particular also. Whether it is, if we look in Southeast Asia, for instance, it's a lot about having access and having a proprietary database to be able to use it and themselves to add their comparable and use it to keep it for their own use. If we look at when we went to we had a lot of discussions with middle firms, I would say in the Middle East, where it was a lot about the management process, how to deal with the workflow of the valuation and make sure that the project manager can actually run the project smoothly and so on. And so every time one valuer is bringing something else on the table and we look at it and say, okay, well, we had it figured it out, we thought, and we actually are going to change a bit to make sure that this comment is covered and integrates whatever use that could come up that way. So it's been interesting and actually making the solution better. And so we exchange pretty much every couple of weeks with them.
Indeed. No, and I think that that market insight is invaluable, because I think one of the dangers, obviously, with sort of prop tech or however you want to call it, is that danger of very clever technical people building a solution without understanding really what the problem is, because as you say, and I think that's perhaps doubly so with valuation, where there are so many moving parts in terms of different asset types, different market dynamics. But I suppose it does come back to the benefit of having something like IVS and the Red Book, where you do have at least a common process, a common framework for the workflow and the kind of data that you need to have.
Yeah, exactly. And so for us now, it's integrating. So we have our development roadmap, but then we can go in back with those comments that they made and make sure that this is reflected in the development from a practical point of view. And so we are valuers, so we also use it for our own use. And so that helps us making sure that even though it sounds good on paper and it's beautiful on the screen, it actually makes sense from the valuation process point of view, and that's practical to use and not something that is beautiful technically and actually cannot be used really.
As you say, so you're effectively using it live at MAD. So ultimately, you're the alpha tester, the people who make sure that actually every time you change the code, it is delivering something.
Exactly.
Is there anything you could show us quickly to give us perhaps a flavour of what the platform looks like?
Let us jump on it. So sorry, we're very excited.
So first of all, we've put some demonstration. Once again, we've put some demo screencast live. We've got some screencast available showing